already have a general video about which challenges are the best for open innovation projects. I mentioned that they should be strategically important for your company, they should be ambitious enough and well-defined. In this video, I want to focus on how to prioritize your innovation challenges and how to identify the challenge you should focus on right now, the one that would bring you and your business the most benefits. This general framework I will be talking about today can be used for prioritizing basically any challenges and ideas, not only innovation ones, but also business ideas, for example, anything that you have. So let's start. Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Lisa and I've been working for more than 5 years on organizing collaborative university competitions for world well-known companies, helping them to solve their extreme innovation challenges. Now I continue my journey with the goal of fostering innovation by helping different parties of the innovation process collaborate and co-create. On this channel, I explore collaboration projects for innovation management, share my experience in managing these projects and processes, and uncover strategies for making collaboration efforts more effective. Any business has a number of innovation challenges to solve, and in theory, it's good to solve all of them. However, it's impossible to do. We have limited resources, and for any active business, the number of challenges grows day by day. The fight never really stops. So we need to identify what we should focus on now and in the near future. We must prioritize our challenges. And I constantly say that just like humans, every business is different, so it's quite difficult to actually propose one unified solution that would work well for every company. So obviously the framework I will be explaining today should be tweaked and adapted for every business according to their processes, organizational structure, culture, and obviously strategic needs and goals. However, here is what you need for pretty much any prioritization process. First of all, we are starting with a team of experts, your decision makers. Then you also need to have a list of criteria to prioritize the innovation challenges you have. You need to understand how exactly you will be evaluating your challenge ideas, which factors are going to influence your decision, and what is important to take into account. Then you should obviously have a list of your innovation challenges, their descriptions and initial details that would give you an idea of why it is really important to solve this particular innovation challenge for your business right now. And you need to have a method that you will be using to evaluate and, well, prioritize your challenge ideas. And those are the very first things that you need to define before making anything. I think it's really good to select a person responsible for this whole process who will be able to manage all the preparations and meetings. So then this person might embark on this project by identifying a decision-making team. So when it comes to the team of experts that is going to make that decision on what you should focus right now, on what innovation challenge you should focus on, you need to make sure you invite professionals from your team. We are talking about internal stakeholders, heads of various departments, including marketing, including finance, legal department. We should obviously have tech experts from your R&D team, and it's really nice to have high-level management, because I believe that choosing what you should focus on when it comes to innovation is one of the most important decisions your company is going to make. And I also think that sometimes it is really nice to invite some external experts to listen to their opinions as well. It could be experts in your product or service area. It could be university professors, maybe suppliers or representatives of your really important strategic customers, or it can be an innovation consultant, Their input about challenges could be very, very beneficial. However, I must also admit that you should make sure you are not relying on their opinion too much during your decision-making process, especially if such experts have certain interests, and in many cases they do have, because they might push for their own agendas when you should focus on what is important for your business. You should focus on your strategy, and often what these experts are looking for might go against your needs. For example, input of your strategic customers is really important. However, you should not forget that you have other customers and maybe you're looking for a completely new market. So then their opinion, they might push for what they really need in your product or your services. But yeah, just remember that it's your decision, it's your strategy, and it's your company. And once you have this team of your decision makers, together with them, you should define a list of criteria using which you are going to prioritize your challenge ideas. And this list should include all important factors that might influence your decision. For example, how big of a market you can get when you solve this particular innovation challenge, and how it might influence your position in the market in general. How difficult it might be to actually solve this innovation challenge, how much time it might take, and how critical the solution is for your customers. How risky it is to actually launch a solution of your innovation challenge in the market, and how well it actually works, how well it aligns with your company's strategy, and many other factors as well. So you should include all the important details that might influence your decision to continue with this particular challenge or not. If the solution is important for your sustainability strategy, you should take it into account. If one of your competitors is about to introduce something new, you should consider this factor too. If there's a new regulation coming, all those things are really important and they should be taken into account. Also, despite the fact that you really need to consider all these various parameters, I wouldn't add too many of them in your criteria list, because if it's too many, if there are more than 10 parameters, you're gonna feel yourself overwhelmed when you start evaluating your innovation challenges. So you have your list of criteria, and the next step would be preparing information about all the challenges in your short list. And I would call this information challenge pitches, because it might be a good idea to present information about them in the form of short pitches. So to prepare such pitches, you should have the challenges names, their descriptions, information with regard to the criteria list that you have defined, reasons why it is really important to solve each challenge, and how these solutions would help reach your strategic goals, and some other things as well. Anything that you feel might be important to help your decision-making team basically make a decision and prioritize your challenges. And then, for example, you might ask relevant departments' heads prepare those pitches, or maybe your head of R&D should do it all, should prepare all the pitches about all the challenges. Obviously, here a lot depends on your company structure, who is responsible for what, and whether your R&D is centralized or decentralized. I would just like to make one point here. Before going into your full mode prioritization, if your list of innovation challenges is too big, you might want to filter these potential projects at the initial stage. For example, you might want to choose only those you and your decision-making team strongly believe might be beneficial, to not overdo things. Maybe you should choose projects based on a specific threshold. For example, focus on those with higher technology readiness level, something that you can really get to the market faster, something that is less risky, or whatever. Like, just define this threshold and filter out all the projects that might not work well for you. Maybe you will consider them in the future, but for now it's better to have like a limited list of these challenges, because let's say you have like 30 challenges, and trust me, it's going to be too much to go with each of them through, for example, the PROMETHEE model that we're going to discuss, or even a weighted scoring model. So yeah, you maybe want to cut the number down to 10 challenges, which would be a much better decision, and it's just a more realistic number to deal with. And one thing that I want to say about incremental and radical innovation solutions, the thing is, radical innovation would probably get the lowest scores in most cases if you put radical innovations and incremental innovations together, if you would be prioritizing them together. Because radical innovations, they're usually too risky, they're too expensive, they won't provide any major benefits in the near future. But it does not mean that you should completely omit them. It is strategically important to create radical innovation for any company. So I think it might be a better idea to consider radical innovation challenges separately and then prioritize them without mixing them up with incremental ones. So after that, after you have all the information about different challenges, all the decision makers should receive information about these challenges as early as possible before they have to make an important choice. You must give them time to think about it, to absorb it. And while your experts are studying this information about innovation challenges, you can choose a method you are going to actually use to evaluate all the challenge ideas and prioritize them. There are a number of various models to do that, so I will quickly talk about some of them now. I'll try not to get into details, but it's going to be quite difficult, so yeah, just forgive me. The most obvious choice would probably be a weighted scoring model. It's quite simple and the most suitable one for such cases. In the past, when we were doing innovation challenge prioritization for some of our customers, we used bubble charts, which basically represent a weighted scoring model in a graphical way. Bubble charts are great for visualization. However, I think for some cases, they might be too simplistic. Basically, the maximum number of criteria you can consider with bubble chart is 4 if you use a 3D model, because I don't really like to use color as another dimension, but the size of the bubble can be the 4th dimension, for example. Of course, you can include more parameters to consider, but then you would need to group them so that at the end you still get 3 or 4 dimensions. So I really believe it's better to start with a table. So how do you work with a weighted scoring model? You should already have this list of criteria according to which you are going to evaluate each challenge, and you need to give each criterion a certain weight, a percentage out of 100% that would basically show how important each criterion is for you and your company. Because some of these criteria will be more important than others. For example, meeting new governmental regulations might have quite a high priority, like 30% out of 100%. Or the opportunity to get into a new market. This might be really important for your business right now. So whatever you feel is right, whatever you feel is really important for your company at the moment, should get bigger weights. Then you should also define the scores you'll be using. Basically, the points you will be given each challenge according to each parameter. The easiest scoring system would be 1 to 5, but it could be 1 to 7, though I would still choose 1 to 5. And here, 5 might be the highest, meaning the best point a challenge can get for a certain parameter. And then you create a table like that, like the one that you see on the screen. And using this table, you should score each innovation challenge for each criterion. For example, your first innovation challenge on the list might give you an opportunity to open a market that you really want, so you give it a 5. However, maybe this challenge doesn't contribute a lot to your sustainability strategy. So here for a sustainability strategy, you give it a 2. And then you go through all these other parameters and you score your challenge for each of these parameters. Then you take into account the weights you assign for each parameter and you calculate a weighted sum for each challenge. So from what you can see on the screen, challenge A gets the highest weighted score across all the various parameters we evaluated. And that means that most likely you would like to prioritize this specific innovation challenge and do it first before anything else. If you want to use a bubble chart and you have a large list of criteria, you should define, again, 3 or 4 major groups of criteria depending on whether you're going to use a 2D or 3D model. Let's say you're going to use a 2D model, so there will be like 3 groups. We can use 3 groups here. For example, one group of criteria could be responsible for business impact, and it's going to be on the x-axis. The second group of criteria is strategic fit, and it's going to be on the y-axis. And the third group of criteria connected to risk is going to be responsible for the size of the bubble. And in such case, you can assign weights to each parameter differently, because you can assign like 100% to each group, not split this 100% between all the parameters, but for example, the group of strategic fit parameters is getting like 100%, and then you define like which of these single parameters is going to get a certain percentage. And yeah, then you evaluate it once again and calculate weighted sums. And once you do all of it, that's what you might get. So what can we see on this picture? We can see that you most likely might want to prioritize challenge B because it has a relatively low risk, as we can judge from its size. Here, the bigger the size, the lower the risk. And it's also quite well positioned in terms of strategic fit and business impact. So solving this business challenge is going to give us the biggest business impact, and it is aligned with our business strategy. It might make it a bit easier to visually accept information, but again, always to be honest, so I wouldn't rely too much on bubble charts. Now, how do you do this scoring? I mean, what's the process? I think the best way would be to let experts score everything separately and not do it during a meeting. First of all, you will probably spend less time and won't waste too much time arguing, and then there will be less influence from various biases like groupthink bias, for example. You really need to make sure to get opinions from different people, and these opinions might be different, you know. Then you gather your scores, you calculate the average. Of course, it's always nice to go through each individual score and see if there are any fluctuations. If, for example, one of the experts gave, I don't know, for one of the challenges 5 for risk, so they consider this challenge as not that risky, and another expert is giving it 1, something is wrong here, you know. You need to understand why these experts gave such different scores to the same challenge when it comes to risk. You need to talk to your experts and see that. But anyway, if it's more or less coherent, then yeah, you calculate the average, and you could actually add weights to each expert's opinion. For example, you consider some of your experts, well, more expert, maybe like you are gonna give more weights to your head of R&D, maybe they know better, or like head of your marketing department because they know the market better. And then you can use these weights and kind of calculate the average from each expert, taking into account their weights. It looks complicated, but when you start doing it, it's quite a simple system in my opinion. And when it comes to its strengths, it's really easy to use. This model is quite flexible, and it's widely used in innovation and R&D project selection. And you can also use this model with quantitative criteria, not only qualitative. And when it comes to limitations of this model, your weights that you assign to each parameter, to each criterion, they might be quite subjective. And this model also assumes that criteria are independent, which is not really true in real life. There is also another model that can be used to decide which innovation challenge you should prioritize. It's called PROMETHEE, or PROMETHEE, or Preference Ranking Organization Method for Enrichment Evaluations. PROMETHEE ranks options by comparing them pairwise across multiple criteria. So you don't compare everything at once like you did with weighted scoring model. You take challenges A and B, for example, and then compare them. And then you take challenges A and C and you compare them, and B and C, and so on. I'm going to give you an example to explain how it works. So let's say you have 3 innovation challenges, A, B, and C, and you have 4 criteria to consider, including market potential, risk, strategic fit, and time to market. You then define the weight of each criterion, how big of an influence it has. For example, market potential is the most important one for you out of all of them. You would like to focus on innovation that would bring you higher revenues, and other parameters are more or less equal for you. So let's say that's how the weights would be defined. Market potential has 40%, risk has 20%, strategic fit also 20%, and time to market, well, 20%. Then you again come up with a scoring system. For example, you make a decision to use scores from 1 to 7. Again, the higher the score, the better it is, except for the risk and time to market parameters. Here is going to be vice versa. And then you should define preference logic and preference strength for when you will be comparing each pair of challenges. What do I mean by that? When you are comparing criteria for challenges, you need to define how the difference in scores for this criteria is going to influence your preference. So for our 4 criteria, we might have for market potential, difference less than 1, less or equal 1 does not matter. Preference strength is 0. For difference in score between 2 and 3, it means weak preference, and preference strength is going to be 0.5. And if difference is more than 4 or equal 4, for this difference you have strong preference, and preference strength is going to be 1. And I'm not going to name all the other criteria, you just can see them on the screen, you can pause it. Again, this is something that I'm giving just for an example, just to show you how it can be done. So you defined your preference strength, and then once you define all of it, you score each challenge according to all the criteria you defined. For example, if you look at the screen, that's the picture we have. So for challenge A, you have 5 for market potential, 4 for risk, 4 for strategic fit, and 7 for time to market. It means that it's going to take quite some time to get the solution for challenge A to market. Then for challenge B, market potential is 2, risk is 1, strategic fit is 5, time to market 3, and yeah, you can see it on the screen what we have for challenge C. Once you evaluated all your challenges, we have to compare all the challenges in pairs and calculate the difference in scores for each pair. And that's what we're going to have for pair for challenges A and B. So for market potential, the difference is going to be 3. So we have weak preference for challenge A. Risk is also 3. And here for risk specifically, because we defined different preference strength for risk than for market potential, and that means that difference 3 is going to give us strong preference for challenge B, and strategic fit is going to be 1. The difference is going to be 1. So we have a weak preference for challenge B, and time to market we have 4. The difference is 4. So we have strong preference for challenge B. And that's what we have for the pair for challenges B and C, where market potential is, the difference for market potential is 5. So we have strong preference for challenge C. For risk, the difference is 5. Strong potential for challenge B. Strategic fit is 0, so there is no preference in challenges. And time to market, the difference is 2, so again, also no preference according to defined preference strength. So far, we see a clear preference of challenge B over challenge A and challenge C over challenge B, though everything can change, of course, if we add weights. In this particular case, also something that we might keep in mind, there is no need to compare challenges A and C, as the picture is pretty clear, but in real life, of course, it's better to check all the pairs and compare them all. But yeah, let's add weights that we defined to make sure we prioritize our challenges correctly. And that's the picture we are going to get if we add our weights and we look at preference of challenge A over challenge B, and total preference of challenge A over B is 0.2, and that's the picture that we are going to get if we look at the preference of challenge B over challenge A, and total preference of challenge B over 8 is 0.8. So adding the weights didn't really change our picture. We still definitely prefer challenge B over challenge A. Now let's do that for the second comparison of challenges B and C. And yeah, if we take a look at that, we will see that total preference of challenge B over challenge C is 0.2. And if we look at preference of challenge C over challenge B, we're going to get 0.4. That means we would prefer challenge C over challenge B. And yeah, the results in our example are pretty much clear. So challenge C is going to have our priority number 1. So we would want to conduct this challenge first. We're going to want to find the solution for this challenge in the first place. Then challenge B has prior number 2. So that's going to be the second priority. And challenge A has prior 3. I honestly hope that this is clear why we get these results. Though, as I said, I'm not getting into details. I'm not explaining what we do on each single step. I'm not calculating with you. So if you have any questions why specifically we got the result that we got, please let me know in the comment section. I will explain it to you with all the details, how I calculated it, so that you understand. But in general, I just want to show you how these different models work and how you can get your prioritization of innovation challenges done. But anyway, once again, It's just what we have in our specific situation. In our example, in real life, you will probably have more challenges and a wider list of criteria. So you would need to put more time to get it done, to find a decision. And I find this model, this PROMETHEE model, really nice, as it takes into account how much you prefer to do one challenge over another. And often it does really matter, because for some criteria, your preference might be stronger than for others. So these differences in scores will play a bigger role, and it might completely change the final picture compared to what you might have had with a simple weighted scoring model. And it's good to use PROMETHEE when you have conflicting criteria, when differences matter only beyond thresholds, or when you want to protect radical innovation projects. They are rarely prioritized, as I have mentioned before. They don't get higher scores except for risks, where the lower the score, the better it is. So yeah, if you don't want to compare and prioritize radical innovation separately, you can of course include them in your list of criteria, but then it's better to use the PROMETHEE model, so that at least your radical innovation challenges have a small chance to get a higher priority. I want to talk about one more model that you can use to decide on the priority of your innovation projects, and I'm talking about scenario-based prioritization. It's not a mathematical model, it's a logic-based approach, and the main idea of this approach is to see which project outcomes could perform well across various future scenarios. When we work with innovation projects, we are dealing with very high level of uncertainty. The future is unclear and the outcome of our projects are very ambiguous. So by using this model, we're trying to go through possible combinations of various factors and foresee how successful our company, our business can be if we prioritize this or that innovation project. So in order to conduct this analysis, you first of all need to identify key uncertainties that exist in and around your business. For example, you can expect new regulations coming, or vice versa. There could be no obstructions from the government. It can be a competitor coming up with a similar offer, or maybe the market will be free and you don't need to worry about your competitors. It can be that customers adopt your product quite slowly, or they can do it quickly, or the project is finished earlier or later. And there could be other things, other factors that might hinder your growth, or vice versa. They might help you grow. And you need to take into account, again, as many of them as possible. Then what you need to do is to create different scenarios by combining these uncertainties, good and bad. For example, you have scenario number 1, the project is delayed, you get the first prototype 6 months later than expected, but the market is free and your competitors are unbothered. Then you have the second scenario. Here it can be vice versa. The project is completed on time, yet there is another product from a competitor. And you come up with all these possible combinations of the uncertainties you listed. And then you basically put each of your potential projects into each scenario and you evaluate how well they're going to perform and how the outcomes of these various scenarios are going to influence your company and its performance. Then again, you can also have a list of criteria to evaluate the outcome of each scenario, And here for evaluation, you can also use scoring. You can choose one of the previous models that we have discussed. But in this case, it is really important to not focus on the project with the highest score, but to identify the one that is going to perform well in most scenarios. Maybe it's not going to be like the best, maybe it's not going to get you the most revenue possible, but you need to identify this one project that is going to bring the outcome, that is going to do well in most of the scenarios that you have listed, because that is just increasing your chances for success. And based on this, you prioritize your projects. Now, this model might slightly change the whole setup of your process, because you would obviously need to identify uncertainties at the very beginning of your process together with the criteria you will be using to evaluate the outcome. Or you might also want to use this specific method at the very beginning of your process when working on your initial challenge pitches, when you give it descriptions and explanations of why you actually need to complete these projects. But here, really, you just need to be flexible with all these different models that I provided, and there are more models that exist. And yeah, you need to feel free to tweak the steps according to what you need. And of course, as I have mentioned, there are other methods of prioritization, like Pareto analysis, the very simple ranking and rating method, the analytic hierarchy process, the technique for order preference by similarity to ideal solution, the Delphi method, etc., etc. And you might have your own setup in your company. You might combine these various methods to get the result you need that is going to work for your business, for your innovation challenges, for your strategy. There's just one thing that I want to mention. Of course, these methods exist to help you make a decision, but there could be different reasons why you still might choose to focus on one challenge over another, even if that challenge doesn't get the first place in your scoring. So again, these methods, they guide you, but you are the one who makes the decision. Your decision-making team makes this. And sometimes you might just have this gut feeling to go with that particular project just because you feel it's going to work out for you and for your company. So that was about different methods of prioritization. So you have your decision-making team of experts, you have your list of criteria, you have your final list of innovation challenges with information about them, and you have chosen your evaluation method. What do you do next? You set up a meeting. During your first meeting, you should explain what you are going to do. You need to prioritize your innovation challenges, and you need to explain how you're going to do it. You also need to introduce the team of experts, and you need to present the method and criteria you are going to use. It's also good to present the challenges and let the decision-making team ask questions about the challenges and the overall process. Then you should give experts time to complete their evaluations while also assisting them and answering their questions, if needed, of course. Once their personal evaluations are complete, you combine them, you calculate the average, again, depending on the method you're using, and then you discuss the results and make final decisions on which innovation challenge you should focus on first. And maybe there will be a couple of them if you have this capacity. And now, as I have mentioned before, because you might use various methods and various setups for your prioritization process, everything that I was talking about is not set in stone. Be flexible. Have as many meetings as you need, just not too many of them, to talk about challenges and discuss outcomes and discuss questions and concerns. At the end of the day, I just wanted to give you a general idea of how you can prioritize your innovation challenges. By the way, if you have your own very specific way of defining which projects should be a priority for your company, please share it with us. Real life examples are extremely important and very useful for everyone. I also want to talk about using AI tools for your prioritization, how you should utilize them. And first of all, I really believe that AI tools might help you to prepare your challenge pitches and give a foundation for presenting information according to the criteria you have identified. Then I think AI platforms might be great for scenario-based prioritization. You might ask the platform to prepare lots of various scenarios containing all possible combinations of uncertainty factors, and you might want to go through these scenarios with all possible projects from your shortlist. You might ask the machine to assist you with identifying these uncertainty factors in the first place. Obviously, I would still recommend carefully reviewing each case and each scenario. Don't trust the machine blindly, but I believe that might be great support because it would at least give you some foundation for your further discussion. I would also consider using AI as a part of your team of experts. The weight of its voice shouldn't overpower real decision makers. However, I believe it might give additional food for thought and ideas to consider. It might show you a different perspective, so it might make sense to use it for scoring because you might just see that the machine gives you a different result than the team of experts, and you might want to understand why. Is it a mistake of the AI tool, or you might miss something? And one more thing that I want to cover today, one more question: how can an innovation facilitator assist in the process, and how can they assist at all? And in my opinion, of course, they can assist you to a certain extent, because innovation facilitators usually have really great experience with various innovation projects across different industries. Moreover, if you have already made a decision to work with them, they are the ones who will be connecting you with a team that will be solving your challenges. For example, if you are using an open innovation approach, so they might use some external opinions for your challenge evaluation. For example, what we did in the past was we went with some challenges to university teams that we identified might be capable of solving them. And we asked these teams about these challenges, whether it was possible to solve these challenges or not, and whether these teams are ready to commit to solving challenges. And it was really helpful to a certain extent for our client to make a decision to prioritize a particular challenge over others. However, I wouldn't rely too much on the answers. We as humans tend to be overly optimistic about such things, but I think it's also just nice to know that there are teams, there are experts willing to solve your challenge, willing to help you with these challenges, and if there are many of them, your chances of a successful result for a particular challenge increase, of course. But again, this is just one of the parameters, It might be one of the deciding factors in your prioritization, or you just might, just take this into account and understand that. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that it's good to include innovation facilitators, innovation brokers in your decision-making and prioritization process. However, when it comes to facilitators, you should remember that you are the only one who can make a decision about which project to go ahead with or well, maybe not the only one, but your decision-making team, they are the ones who should do that. No one knows your business better than you, so trust yourself and trust your company experts. And again, sometimes it's just about your gut feeling and nothing else. I hope this video was useful. I hope it's going to help you to prioritize your innovation challenges or any business challenges that you have, because yeah, you can use this framework for your business challenges in general. And yeah, I hope that you will be successful with whatever innovation challenge you are trying to solve. I wish you good luck with them. And yeah, if you have any questions about anything I was talking about in this video, or open innovation or innovation in general, please feel free to use the comment section below or just text me on LinkedIn. I'll be happy to talk about it in private. And yeah, I wish you a good day and hope to see you next time with the next episode, with the next video. Have a good one. Bye!